I'm sure every Star Wars fan knows about the Imperial Navy and Army, but did you know that there were actually 9 total branches of the Imperial military? Today I'm going to go over all of them, including the Imperial Department of Military Research, the Diplomatic Corps, the Engineering Corps, the Survey and Exploration Corps, the Surgical Corps, the Military Police, and Imperial Intelligence. Let's still start off with the branches everyone knows about. The Imperial Navy was the largest part of the military, made up of Star Destroyers, the mini variants of TIE fighters, and other capital ships. Like many aspects of the Empire, the ships of the Imperial Navy were designed as symbols of dominance and fear to the citizens of the galaxy. The Starfleet was led by 12 Grand Admirals like Thrawn, officers who were known for their superior military strategies, or officers who simply knew how to rise in the ranks through their political and social connections. Capital ships had significant firepower of their own, but would also transport TIE fighters into battle. The primary Imperial starfighter strategy was to use swarms of TIEs to overwhelm their enemies. Production of Imperial starfighters was fast and cheap, designed without life support or shield generators, leaving the expendable pilots inside more vulnerable to attack. The Imperial Army was the second largest branch of the Imperial military, which consisted of various troopers and ground vehicles created for battle on planetary surfaces. AT-STs, AT-AT, speeder bikes, and other tanks were common sights in occupied Imperial territory. Most people think of stormtroopers as the primary soldier in the Imperial Army, and by the time of the Battle of Yavin and beyond, that was true. But during the earlier years of the Empire, the infantry was far more diverse, especially as clone troopers were phased out of Imperial service. Army troopers were much more common at that time, like Han Solo and the other members of his unit seen on Mimban. The Imperial Army was led by officers holding the rank of Grand General, like Cassio Tag, who was promoted after the destruction of the first Death Star. The Imperial Department of Military Research, or IDMR for short, was responsible for technological research and development. Top-secret projects like the Dark Trooper program were created under their watch. They were also the creators of the Empire's ITO interrogation droids and spy droids, working alongside the Imperial Security Bureau to achieve specific intelligence goals. More publicly, they designed TIE fighter flight helmets and stormtrooper armor, but they might want to go back to the drawing board on that one. It doesn't seem to offer much in the way of protection. And of course, the IDMR had a hand in the development of the Death Star and its super laser under the supervision of Galen Erso and Orson Krennic, who directed the Imperial Military Department of Advanced Weapons Research, which itself fell under the umbrella of Imperial Intelligence. The Diplomatic Corps represented the Empire and the Emperor's interests throughout the galaxy. They spread Imperial policies and adapted them when necessary to new worlds that were brought into the Empire. Ambassador Telvar was seen on Mon Cala as early as 1 year after the end of the Clone Wars, and his assassination sparked a more hostile takeover of the planet. The Diplomatic Corps worked to reduce, shall we say, aggressive negotiations by the Empire, who were more than happy to occupy and conquer any world through violence. But their rare appearance throughout Star Wars suggests the Empire did not rely on them much. They were likely seen more frequently in the core worlds, where word of war crimes would spread more quickly than they would in the remote Outer Rim, where the Imperial military felt it could act with impunity. Little is currently known about the Engineering Corps. Even in Star Wars Legends, they were only written about in the Imperial Sourcebook role-playing guide. They were said to be connected to the Imperial Navy, working on construction projects and the manufacturing of new, untested technology. They sound similar to the Imperial Department of Military Research, but perhaps more public-facing. Instead of working on top-secret projects like the Death Star or the Dark Trooper, it's possible the Engineering Corps was responsible for new advancements in Star Destroyers or Imperial Walkers. For example, the leap from the Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer to the Imperial 2 class wouldn't have any obvious need to be kept hidden from the rest of the galaxy. The Survey and Exploration Corps, or the ISC, explored the galaxy. The Empire had a special interest in mapping the edges of wild space, as seen in the Adventures in Wild Space series. If any new planets of note were discovered, especially planets rich in valuable resources, the Empire would surely claim and occupy it. Palpatine also had an interest in the unknown regions of space, and worked with Grand Admiral Thrawn to map pieces of the dangerous territory. It makes sense that the Survey and Exploration Corps may have also had a hand in exploring and charting the unknown regions. The Surgical Corps has only been mentioned in a canon reference book at this point, so everything we know about it comes from legend sources, which still isn't much. Wolf Yularen described them as the Empire's medical branch. They were stationed on Star Destroyers and warships where they could tend to wounded soldiers and other personnel. But because it was the Empire, those same doctors were also instructed to help create new methods of biological warfare. It's likely the Krytos virus weaponized by the Imperial remnant of Star Wars Legends was developed by the Imperial Surgical Corps. The military police is pretty self-explanatory. They made sure members of the Imperial military did not act outside of Imperial laws. The group was divided into Imperial Army military police and Imperial Navy military police, and I'm sure it wasn't corrupt at all. While the book The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire makes no mention of the military police, it does discuss its law enforcement in great detail. Imperial laws were enforced on a whim, designed to bend for officials and be brutally applied to everyone else. As the book states, laws were not designed to bring about restitution, but instead would be applied in specific circumstances. There was no stability, safety, or security to be found within Imperial laws. I imagine this means the military police were more concerned with rooting out signs of rebellion within their ranks than they were in actually enforcing rules and regulations. The final branch of the Imperial military was Imperial Intelligence. While it was originally designed to cooperate with the Imperial Security Bureau, the two groups wound up in active competition. Intelligence was broken into several subgroups including Adjustments, Analysis, the Bureau of Operations, the Death Trooper Division, the Imperial Information Office, Advanced Weapons Research, the Internal Organization Bureau, the Naval Intelligence Agency, and Sector Plexus. The benign-sounding Adjustments Department was the most elite branch. Their agents took on completely classified missions and were allowed to operate by any means necessary to solve problems. Analysis and the Imperial Information Office both observed massive amounts of surveillance data. The Intelligence Division would take that data, decipher it, find trends and threats, and send their findings to their superiors. Each sector of the galaxy had its own intelligence division. The Bureau of Operations monitored enemy and diplomatic activity and was authorized to destabilize governments through assassination or other means. Death Troopers were a division of the Imperial Army, but were specifically responsible for protecting Imperial officials and operations. The Department of Advanced Weapons Research was under the command of Director Krennic until his death at the Battle of Scarif. They were charged with the development of the Death Star and other special weapons projects. The Internal Organization Bureau was broken into IntSec and IntCon. IntSec was yet another intelligence branch under the larger Imperial Intelligence umbrella. IntCon was in charge of counterintelligence, meaning they worked against enemy intelligence agents. Rebel intelligence would have been their primary rival, but they probably kept eyes on the Imperial Security Bureau as well. Naval intelligence was specifically the Navy's intelligence gathering division, as the name would imply, and Sector Plexus was the infrastructure that helped all these various divisions communicate using a network of droids, the HoloNet, and Imperial computer systems. Even though the Imperial Security Bureau was not a part of the Imperial military, I still wanted to bring it up to clarify why it was set apart. While the ISB had a military-style hierarchy, it was actually a law enforcement agency. They investigated the loyalty of not only its citizens, but also its officers and military personnel. Like I mentioned, it was originally meant to work with Imperial Intelligence, but the ISB developed more power than its fellow agency, and soon the two groups were rivals. The Imperial Security Bureau had a more direct line to the Emperor, had a representative on the Imperial Joint Chiefs, and in general had more influence. One of their primary concerns was still rooting out rebellious activity, but since they were not actively a part of the Imperial military, they were willing to look more closely at high-ranking officers. Many members of the military actively feared the Imperial Security Bureau. This kind of infighting and self-policing was likely by design to encourage competition. The Empire was created by a Sith master who had to kill his own master to rise to the top. Palpatine wants his officials to fight to prove their worth, which would also discourage cooperation against his own power. But those are all 9 branches of the Imperial military, plus the Imperial Security Bureau explained. I'll put a link to my other comprehensive Star Wars videos in the cards if you'd like to see more. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.